How's it going, everyone? I'm Zayas, and today I'm here to review Oyasumi Punpun. Punpun is a slice of life psychological drama Seinen manga written by Inio Asano and published in Big Comic Spirits, which is tons of great Seinen manga. By this point, Asano was a seasoned veteran, having written tons of manga, and also have just coming off written his most popular work yet, Seinen, also having previously written Nijihara Holograph, and after this he wrote tons of great manga as well, such as Dead Dead Demons DD Destruction, and recently he wrote Heroes, which was a short funny manga. Although Seinen performed extremely well and was an extremely great manga, Asano's most popular work is still Oyasumi Punpun, and that is for good reason. Punpun is a combination of shocking, depressing, and sometimes just beautiful. Right off the bat, you'll notice that Punpun has a unique art style. Its main character is a bird instead of a human. And although he is a human in real life, for the sake of our view of Punpun, he is a bird. And this may seem just like a whim of Asano's at first, but as you read on, you realize that this was done intentionally, and this was to make it so that it's easier for viewers to relate to Punpun. Early on in the series, when Punpun is a child, it's extremely easy to understand his emotions, as Asano is pretty much free to draw whatever he wants to express what Punpun is feeling. And later on in the series, this is amplified even further, as Punpun will undergo drastic changes depending on his mood, environment, circumstances, etc. It may have also been Asano's intention to make people believe that this story of Oyasumi Punpun is about the cute life of this tiny little bird before completely shattering it. Asano certainly does like to mess with people. He even mocks himself in the manga for making Punpun into a little bird. And that is pretty much representative of Asano's style of comedy. There's a ton of dark comedy snuck into this thing, and while normally I would find a lot of these moments funnier, it's kind of hard with all the depressing moments sort of going on around it. Going back to the art style in this thing, the characters are drawn just a little bit ugly at times, as Asano does in pretty much every single one of his works, and I think this suits Punpun quite well, as Punpun is meant to show humanity at their ugliest and at times at their darkest. And finally, in terms of art style, my favorite part of the art was actually the backgrounds. And the backgrounds are simply beautiful. The spreads are incredible. The quality is consistently high throughout the manga. You're always going to find like one or two pages in the chapter which are just mind-blowing, and the attention to detail is just phenomenal. I would go as far to say that Punpun has the best backgrounds in manga, period. I can't really think of a manga that has drawn better backgrounds at a more consistent rate than Punpun. This manga also has really creative paneling at times and really interesting conversations. Sometimes the characters will talk to someone, but they won't talk back, so you just have to assume what they're saying during their dialogue. And in terms of the plot seems to be a coming-of-age story of a young boy. But later on, you quickly realize that this is not the case, as there is a shocking turn of events towards the end of the manga. And a lot of people quote this ending to be jarring and disorienting. At first, I found the ending of Punpun to be pretty shocking as well, but now this is my 5th time reading it, and my views on Punpun have changed quite a bit since I was a kid. I used to sympathize a lot more with Punpun. Punpun has gone through a lot of experiences that a lot of people can relate to. Whether it's falling in love for the first time, whether it's having your parents separate, or going through an experience for the first time growing up. And that's how it was intended to be. The entire first portion of Punpun makes you attached to him as a character, so that when you see him go down this dark path, it's even the more shocking. And the plot is a lot of why I found Punpun to be a little depressing. You want the best for these characters, you want these characters to succeed, but they're just going around constantly fucking up. They're just hurting each other's, they're hurting themselves, and it always ends in a disaster. And when it comes to the characters in Punpun, pretty much every character in Punpun has done something sort of scummy. They've done something that's fucked up their own lives, they've done something that's fucked with other people's lives. When it comes to characters in Punpun, first I'll cover Punpun's parents. Punpun's dad really wasn't there for Punpun throughout much of his life. And this is because of the domestic violence incident which happened really early on in the manga. And a lot of us just assume Punpun's dad got really drunk and really out of control, but we later learned that this was not the case. We learn that it was actually Punpun's mother who messed a lot of things up, and continues to do so throughout the rest of Punpun's life. However, his father is not completely absolved of all responsibility, as he does just leave him alone with this woman, which he knows is sort of crazy and a little bit psychotic. Punpun's mother will later come to be the source of most of Punpun's problems in life. She ends up doing a lot of things that she shouldn't be with Punpun as a young child, going around sleeping with tons of men and getting jealous afterwards, going to hospitals and causing ruckuses with the staff, falling in love with a guy who's literally Punpun's friend, who's like 10 years old. Of course, she actually does care about Punpun, and a lot of the problems that she creates are actually because of some of her own trauma that she probably has bottled up from before. However, she never really makes it up to Punpun, as she passes away shortly after committing a lot of these deeds. And this is really where Punpun's life sort of takes a downhill. It's a very pivotal moment for him. Aiko is a character who experienced some traumatic experiences of her own. She had a mother who was borderline crazy and involved in a cult, and this led her to be both abused by her mother and to be ostracized by other kids for having a crazy mother. Aiko sort of uses Punpun as a crutch. Punpun shows Aiko that she is wanted and loved by others. And although this is temporarily a great thing for Aiko, when Punpun leaves, she feels a great sense of abandonment and is heartbroken. I'm not sure if later on in the story, when she attempted to date the guy from the tennis club, if this was because she was searching for another emotional crutch, or if she was simply just trying to get back at Punpun. After this, Aiko pretty much lives out the rest of the series in a state of fear. She is pretty much stuck in a cycle of abuse with her mother, and despite her being abusive both physically and mentally, Aiko is unable to escape this, maybe because of some form of Stockholm Syndrome. At first glance, Sachi may appear to be one of the more well put together characters in Punpun, having her life together and trying to achieve her goals. However, the more you look at it, the more you realize this isn't true. She was abused by her stepfather and step-siblings at a young age and not shown much love. So when people are reliant on her, she sort of gets what she is looking for, and she uses Punpun to sort of achieve this end. Sachi tries to act as if she doesn't care what other people think about her and she's going to do what she does regardless. However, this is not true. When she was young, she got plastic surgery because she didn't like the way she looked. And later on in life, when Punpun tries to tell her compliments and stuff to boost her morale, she sort of vehemently denies a lot of these, like saying she's a great manga author, because she lacks confidence in herself. The relationship between Sachi and Punpun seems to be extremely unhealthy, when it just seems like they're licking each other's wounds most of the time. And although Sachi does help Punpun, you don't want to see Punpun go down this horrible path. There are tons of other characters who are very important to the story as well. Seki and Shimizu are characters who at first appear to be afterthoughts, but later on you realize they're quite interesting characters. Shimizu has hallucinations because his mother died when he was a young kid, or maybe perhaps just he's had them forever. And Seki tries to put up a brave front, but is probably the least confident character in the series. Pegasus seems to be a gag character at first, but later on you realize that he actually mirrors Seki and Shimizu with the math teacher, and ends up being a pretty important character to the series overall. Punpun's uncle seems to be a character who's relatively sane at first, but later on you realize is a complete douchebag and does a ton of horrible things and just feels bad about himself. And when it comes to Punpun, Punpun sort of watches this twisted world and just observes in fear. Eventually the baggage will be too much for Punpun, and the fear will sort of accumulate, and this will result in Punpun trying to cast himself aside, but it doesn't work. Punpun never really ends up getting the help that he needs or the guidance that he needs, and this pretty much results in the worst possible ending that Punpun could have possibly had. Sachi is a person who he doesn't really know if he cares or she cares for him. She just sort of views him as a pet, and he has to raise a child of someone who isn't even his own. The ending is not satisfying at all. However, this is what Asano was trying to depict, a world which is cold and devoid of hope. This manga certainly isn't for everyone, and when you finish reading this manga, you certainly won't feel good, but that's not really what you go to Punpun for. Although I can't relate to Punpun as much anymore, as I started to see him as a character who sort of pitied himself. I can still certainly enjoy this manga and enjoy this world that Asano has built that's extremely cold and shows the worst sides of humanity. It's extremely distinct, and at times it's incredibly beautiful. I think it's one of the best manga series ever written, and I'm feeling a strong 10. I would highly recommend this if you do want to read something that has you feeling a little depressed. Like, subscribe, comment, everything. Thanks for watching. I'm thinking of maybe doing Rent a Girlfriend next. Stay tuned, or leave any recommendations you want as well.